He writes amazingly fierce and independent women.
Get off the stage!
Hope you're doing great. My name is SkymanUniverse. Welcome back to my channel. A while ago I did a reaction to George Lucas, whatever that thing was, reacting to something. And Honest Trailers is a channel I've always enjoyed, and they've just done their version of The Rise of Skywalker, which everyone has been asking about. So I thought this is probably going to be just as amusing, so I thought we'd do a reaction with that today. Could be quite funny. Be very interested to see how far they actually go into it and pick out all of its brilliant flaws that it seems to have accumulated. It's still a joke at the moment, I feel, and nothing going on, nothing exciting. It's just dead space with a rubbish movie, which the Rise of Skywalker is meant to leave you with enough stuff to make you feel like you've been fulfilled for however many years, like the sequels and prequels. I mean the originals, not the sequels. God no. But now we don't have that, and we're just left with confusion, disappointment, and because of this, I have now started rewriting The Force Awakens and trying to look to commission that into a comic book style thing, because I can't help myself. I feel like I could write something 10 times better than what we got, so hopefully that would be kind of cool. And another thing, Disney Plus has just come out in the UK as well, and like, what the bloody hell are they doing? I thought they would like release the whole series at once like they do in Netflix, but for some reason, even though it's been out everywhere, the Clone Wars and The Mandalorian have been released weekly. So you're starting off to watch it, like, it's just so retarded. Maybe because they don't want people to binge watch and get bored all at once, and I think there's not actually that much Star Wars content on Disney Plus. But I feel like, what's the point of having that when you could just, for me, I personally enjoy buying Blu-rays and what have you, collection for myself, because when the chips are down and these sites close, if they ever did, then you've got your hard copy there, and I know everything's moving to digital anyway, so, but I just like having it in my hand. But even The Rise of Skywalker is not on Disney Plus for some reason. Like, you have to pay for that first. You know, it should all come out at once, but to increase profits, they have to release it in digital first. People buy that first, and then later on it's going to be available to buy in DVD, and then because once the sales of that have come through, then it would be on Disney Plus. You mark my words, it would probably happen like that. But any further ado, let's get down to this trailer and enjoy ourselves. Right. So a lot of people have been asking this.
From Colin Trevorrow, until someone saw the Book of Henry, and the director who's never seen a landing he couldn't not stick, comes the epic conclusion to The Force Awakens. Star Wars Episode 7.5, The Rise of Skywalker.
I got a bad feeling about this.
The Last Jedi asked you to forget everything you knew about Star Wars. So when some fans threw the kind of fit usually reserved for ethics and games journalism, Disney panicked and tried to mash the pieces back together in this hollowed out shell of a trilogy that's missing any consistency in its plot, themes, or characters. Unless you fill in the blanks on Twitter, read all the novels, and happen to be running some Fortnite squads with the boys during the crossover event.
The day of victory is
Sorry, I'm going to have to pause this. This is exactly the thing which I couldn't stand, is that you have to read more to find out what the bloody hell was actually happening in the films. Like, you have to read expanded novels and play games or books for them to make up a load of stuff which they forgot in the movie. It's just... really gets, I hate that form of storytelling. Like, it's not good at all. Integral things should be in the movie. You shouldn't have to read outside or play games to find out all these integral parts which should be in the film. I digress. Let's go on.
the day of revenge, the day of the Sith.
Oh, that's what the dead speak was referencing. Fortnite, just like how Return of the Jedi revealed the second Death Star in Root Beer Tapper. When we left them, the Resistance was down to its last gasp, and the First Order reigned supreme. Now, stuff has happened, and the Resistance is back to fighting strength, while the First Order is taking loans from the rich old grandpa they don't call anymore. They'll strike a dark bargain with the only character left on the rotting carcass of the original trilogy, Palpatine, or a clone of him that's like rotting away, and Snoke is also a clone and he's being pickled? I don't know. Not super clear. The Emperor is enacting the same plan he had last time. Troll a young Jedi into striking him down.
Strike me down, and your journey towards the dark side will be complete. Strike me down, and my spirit will pass into you.
And when that fails, hit him with the old zap hands. But luckily, the same Luke Skywalker who bailed in this whole mess also left a scavenger hunt to stop him, sending our heroes running to find the thingy
The location of the Wayfinder has been inscribed upon this dagger.
that leads to the other thingy
The Emperor's Wayfinder is in the Imperial Vault.
that leads to the bad guy.
She's going to Exegol. She's showing us how to get there.
While the First Order keeps sending them running whenever some character
God,
growth
this
is about
film
to
is such a
happen.
mess.
There's an incoming destroyer.
Gotta go now. Ben, we're about to be cooked! We gotta go! They're coming! Hey, come on! Come on!
You know, I've been thinking a lot about this film, and the biggest issue it has at its core is, oh no, TIE fighters! Everybody scram! All the new characters you still barely know after 3 movies have returned,
so
like
true.
Poe, who I guess was a smuggler at some point,
Your friend's old job was running spice.
completing his arc from Han Solo type to just Han Solo. Finn, who's still fighting against all odds to keep himself in the movie.
I need to go alone.
We go together. We're all in this.
Gotta go after her.
Maz Kanata, who snatched a medal out of Leia's cold dead hands just to please some 40-year-old fanboys. These poor schmucks, whose stories must have been cut for time. Kylo Ren, continuing the Skywalker tradition of being a genocidal death cultist who's redeemed by a single act of good. And Rey, who's taken Luke's X-Wing, his lightsaber, his book collection,
Yeah,
possibly his
it's taken
childhood
it all.
home, and his last name.
Ray who? Ray Skywalker.
Can't
Was
listen
Rey
to it.
playing the long game? Because I think Luke just got talented Mrs. Ridley. Don't like the newcomers? Don't worry, no one is ever really gone. Rejoin your old pals 3PO, Chewie, Luke, Leia, Han, and Lando, who are so sidelined at this point that one of them is fake memory wiped,
Memory restoration complete.
one of them fake dies.
He's alive.
One of them thinks Last Jedi was for fake fans only.
A Jedi's weapon deserves more respect.
One of them
Was-
dies from causing the fake death of her son.
What
One
a
of them died
mess.
2 movies ago and is so over this franchise, he wouldn't even get a haircut to cameo as a memory. And one of them is alive and well enough to seemingly hit on his own daughter.
Well, let's find out.
Didn't know that's who Janna was supposed to be? It was in the Rise of Skywalker visual companion book, idiot. You should have been reading that in between rounds of Fortnite. You call yourself a Star Wars fan. So strap in for a conclusion that brings so much new to the franchise. From the new Force powers that would have really come in handy for Qui-Gon Jinn,
Oh man, that's deep. That is deep.
to hammering it home that all these dead stormtroopers were actually kidnapped children,
Harvest more of a galaxy's young.
to finally seeing the Knights of Ren do absolutely nothing than go out like a bunch of weak-ass punks. And mercifully brings the new Star Wars cinematic era to a close with a sloppily constructed, hastily executed mess that managed to do the impossible. Unite fans who loved The Last Jedi and fans who hated The Last Jedi by pleasing none of them.
It's on fire! Whole thing's on fire!
Starring
Oh, we're using our made-up names. Then I am Ray Skywalker.
Hucked Finn, Narco Polo, Gentle Ben,
Use the Force, V.
the only consistent character across all 9 films, participation trophies,
Don't force so hard. You'll end up just like your brother.
an old man wearing the same outfit he had in his 20s,
Cut off my mane!
the Rocketeer, Rolling James Dio, Tony Sith cloned this in a cave, Bland Moff Tarkin, a Rose by any other name would get to speak. How can I be a mechanic? I have no arms. Darth Sibelius. You know what's
man, I
cooler
like
than one
Darth
Captain
Sibelius.
Phasma? 6 Captain Phasmas. And Rey's dramatic reveal phase.
Seriously, this is too on point and true. This is like an eye opener of actually how much of a mess this film is. This is crazy.
Star Wars Episode 9. The Last Star Wars. For a while at least. They really need to think this through. You know, I'm starting to think it's a bad idea for one studio to make every big movie.
I was cybernetically engineered to pilot a spacecraft. I was cybernetically engineered to be a douchebag. What'd you do to the droid?
What'd you do to the Falcon?
Falcon's in a lot better shape than he is.
BB-8's not on fire.
What's left of him isn't on fire. On your left.
But there are more of us, Poe. Look at this.
What?
Crazy, like, as soon as you watch that, you actually begin to realize what the Rise of Skywalker was. Like, I can't even remember it too well. Like, I haven't bought it online. I might buy it when it comes out on Blu-ray, I'm not sure. I just, like, every scene with Palpatine in it, I love, because I love Palpatine so much. But that's no excuse to buy the movie. And then when you see this, it really just puts into perspective of what a jumbled up mess of not just this film, but The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. I cannot help but feel so much that The Last Jedi is the film that absolutely annihilated any hope for the Star Wars sequels. Like, as soon as that was approved, that was the end. Like, you remember the hype for the Force Awakens. Sure, it had its flaws, but it could have built up into something. The Last Jedi killed that dead, like, completely. And who's to blame for that? Yes, Rian Johnson for his terrible story and overconfidence in Star Wars. That was his downfall. Also, the person who approved that and thought it was such an amazing script. There's many interviews where Kathleen Kennedy is praising Rian Johnson.
He is on his way to standing alongside many of the great filmmakers that I've had the opportunity to work with.
Are you crazy?
What an amazing script he's created for Star Wars. Something original, new, refreshing, and it's like a perfect Star Wars movie. And my God, if you were to say that on that script, if I read that script, I would think, close. What a complete load of garbage. Go rewatch Star Wars, study it, then write me a script and come back. And in the meantime, hire someone else. Even Colin Trevorrow's script that went out, The Duel of the Fates, which personally, I did not like that name whatsoever because Duel of the Fates is my jam. And like, it just, I don't want those two mixed up to remind me of the sequel trilogy whatsoever. But there was something about that film which still didn't sit right with me as well. Like, both versions don't work. Like, I don't think, even though he probably would have done maybe a different job and slightly better in other respects, I think J.J. Abrams had the potential. He could have done something and built up to something if they took it all into their hands properly and planned something and stuck to that plan as they went along and interacted with fans and stopped pandering to SJWs and gender politics and everything, and just stick with Star Wars and make a good Star Wars. Something like J.J. Abrams has many shots in there which you feel that same sort of Star Wars feeling, but it's like it's trying to come through but never comes into fruition because the story is so bad, it lets everything down, and that's because the story amounts to nothing. The honest trailers there is so true about so many aspects of the Star Wars movies at the moment. Like, you don't know who these characters really were in this film because nothing happened in The Last Jedi. What kind of person would watch The Force Awakens and then read this script which contradicts everything which came before The Force Awakens and think that's a good idea and that's not going to annoy fans whatsoever? That person should not be in control of this franchise. This makes me think so much. If there was any way that George Lucas can acquire Disney, he didn't know. I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have known what would have happened to Lucasfilm and the sequel trilogy if Kathleen Kennedy took it over. That's why he gave it to her, because she'd worked for him for all this time, but she'd never been in power. Until she went in power, then her true colours shone. And now it's all been completely destroyed. But if George Lucas had it now, just imagine what he can do with it. I'd like to see the resurrection of LucasArts. I'd still want that closeness with Disney, like with Disney parks. There just should have been some sort of thing where Disney is sort of partnership with it, but not in control. I hate so much seeing Disney Plus logo and then Star Wars underneath, like it's property of Disney. I hate that so much. Star Wars was always the leader in its own industry, in the industry, and it was always the forefront for movies, in my book anyway, and it should have remained its own entity. But now it's sitting alongside Marvel and everything. It just makes me think, well, it's the same sort of level as Marvel. But what's worse than that is that Marvel was actually doing 10 times better than Lucasfilm and Star Wars. 10 times better, easily. At least 10 times. So it's just even worse situation than that. I believe a bargain should have been struck where George Lucas should have kept in control. He can name his successors to make the movies, but he should have just stayed in the creative process. This is another thing which someone should have sorted out really early on. They should have kept George Lucas in on the creative process and realized that Star Wars, George Lucas is Star Wars. You can't create Star Wars without him. Like, it doesn't work. And this makes me feel very nervous as to what's ahead for Star Wars movies, because you know the story is probably going to be abysmal like this. It's going to be a convoluted mess. Anti-climactic characters. They're not going to know what's happening with the Force, and it's just going to be a political correctness, agenda-driven, SJW pandering piece of crap. And yeah, and I got all that from this trailer reaction. That's so bad, but it doesn't take much to be the spark, to light the fire, to bring down the First Order and get me going about how much I dislike these new Star Wars movies. It really is a bad point for Star Wars at the moment. This trailer, brilliant, proves it. Well done on these trailers again. Hope you enjoyed that trailer action. Check out the rest of the videos on my channel. My name is SkyMan Universe, and remember, the Force will be with you always.
This next saga, with this next 10 years, obviously Rian Johnson's involved in those conversations because he'll be doing some of that.
No! No!